keep saying yes when everything inside you is screaming no. Your body tightens, your throat constricts, your stomach drops, but your mouth forms the words, "Of course, no problem, I'd be happy to," while some part of you dies a little more. You've become so skilled at this translation, this constant betrayal of your own truth, that you barely notice it anymore. Except you do notice. In the exhaustion that never lifts, in the resentment that builds like pressure behind a dam, in the way you've started to feel like a stranger in your own life. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from, and if this feeling of constant self-abandonment is something you recognize. And if you're ready to understand why this keeps happening, and what's actually available to you when you stop, go ahead and subscribe. Because what we're exploring here isn't just about setting boundaries. It's about coming back to yourself after years of being gone. You wake up and immediately start calculating who needs what from you today, which version of yourself each person expects, how to navigate the minefield of other people's feelings, needs, expectations, demands. You're performing before your feet hit the floor. The performance is so automatic now that you've forgotten it's a performance at all. This is just who you are, right? Helpful, available, flexible, understanding, easy. The person who doesn't create problems, who smooths things over, who makes it work somehow. But here's what you don't say out loud. You're furious. Not all the time, not obviously, but it's there. A low-grade anger that hums beneath everything, occasionally spiking into rage at small things, inappropriate things, things that don't actually deserve the intensity of your response. You snap at your partner about dishes. You feel disproportionate irritation when someone asks you a simple question. You fantasize about disappearing, just getting in your car and driving until you run out of road, leaving no forwarding address, starting over where nobody knows you and nobody needs anything from you. You're also exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. You could rest for a week and still feel this bone-deep weariness because it's not physical tiredness. It's the exhaustion of maintaining a self that isn't actually you, of translating every genuine impulse into something more palatable, more acceptable, more convenient for everyone else, of carrying the weight of everyone's comfort on your shoulders while your own discomfort grows so heavy you can barely stand. And somewhere underneath the anger and the exhaustion, there's something else. A grief so profound you can't quite look at it directly. The grief of having abandoned yourself so thoroughly that you're not sure who you even are anymore. You've spent so long being what others need that your own desires, your own preferences, your own boundaries have become foreign territory. When someone asks what you want, you genuinely don't know. The question itself feels threatening, exposing, impossible to answer. At work, you're the one who stays late, takes on extra projects, covers for colleagues, never complains. Your manager loves you. Your coworkers rely on you, and you hate them for it. Even though you know it's not their fault. You created this. You trained them to expect your endless availability. You taught them that your time, your energy, your life are infinitely flexible resources that exist for their convenience. With your family, you're still playing the role assigned to you decades ago. The responsible one, the helper, The one who manages everyone's emotions, mediates conflicts, remembers birthdays, organizes gatherings, keeps the peace. Your parents call with their problems. Your siblings need favors. Your extended family assumes your presence, your participation, your emotional labor. And you give it every time while something inside you withers. In your friendships, you're the listener, the supporter, the one who shows up in crisis, who offers advice, who makes time no matter what. But when was the last time someone asked how you really are and waited for a true answer? When did you last share your actual struggles, your real fears, your genuine needs? You can't remember because you've learned that your role is to be strong, to be stable, to be the one who has it together. Your friends don't know you're drowning because you've never let them see you struggle. Even in your most intimate relationship, you're performing. You're agreeable when you want to object. You're enthusiastic when you're actually exhausted. You're available when you need space. You say you're fine when you're falling apart. You've created a version of yourself that's easier to love, less complicated, more convenient. And your partner loves that version. Which means they don't actually love you, do they? They love the performance. And you resent them for it while knowing you're the architect of this entire charade. This didn't start yesterday. This pattern has roots that go deep, back to when you were small and learning how the world works, how love works, what it takes to be safe and accepted and wanted. You learned early that your needs were too much. Maybe it was explicit parents who told you to stop being so sensitive, so demanding, so difficult. Or maybe it was subtle, the look on your mother's face when you asked for attention, the way your father withdrew when you expressed emotion, the silent message that your authentic self was somehow wrong. You learned that love was conditional, that acceptance had requirements, that belonging came with a price, and the price was you, your real self, your genuine feelings, your actual needs. So you started editing, adjusting, performing. You became who they needed you to be, and it worked. They smiled. They approved. They loved the version of you that didn't create problems, didn't have needs, didn't take up too much space, and a part of you understood, even then, that this was survival. Children need their caregivers. When those caregivers can't handle your full humanity, you learn to show them only the parts they can manage. You learn to be good instead of real, compliant instead of authentic, easy instead of honest. This wasn't weakness. This was brilliant adaptation. You did what you had to do to survive, to stay connected, to keep the love you needed to live. But here's what happened. That survival strategy, so necessary then, became your entire operating system. The adaptation that kept you safe as a child is now keeping you trapped as an adult. You're still performing, still editing, still abandoning yourself to maintain connection, except now the stakes are different. You don't need these people to survive. You're not dependent on their approval for your basic needs, but your nervous system doesn't know that. Your body still believes that being yourself means being abandoned, rejected, left alone. So every time you feel the impulse to say no, to express disagreement, to state a preference, to assert a boundary, your system floods with fear. Ancient pre-verbal fear that feels like death, because to a child, abandonment is death. Your body remembers what your mind has forgotten. That saying no meant angry faces, withdrawn love, cold silence, or worse. That having needs meant being too much, being a burden, being unwanted. that taking up space meant being pushed out of the space entirely. This is why you can't just decide to set boundaries. This is why all the advice about just say no or put yourself first or stand up for yourself bounces off you like you're made of stone. Because it's not about knowledge. You know you should set boundaries. You know you're allowed to have needs. You know intellectually that you matter. But knowing something in your mind and feeling safe enough in your body to act on it are completely different things. Your nervous system has learned that boundaries equal danger, that saying no triggers abandonment, that asserting yourself means losing connection. And connection, for a human being, for a mammal, for a creature that evolved in groups and cannot survive alone, connection is everything. Your body will sacrifice almost anything to maintain it, including you, especially you. So you keep saying yes. You keep performing. You keep translating your truth into something more palatable. You keep abandoning yourself over and over in small moments and large ones until you can barely remember what your authentic response to anything actually is. You've become a stranger to yourself. And the loneliest part is that you're surrounded by people. You're never alone. You're constantly connected, constantly giving, constantly available, and you've never felt more isolated in your life. Because here's what nobody tells you about living without boundaries. You can be in a room full of people who love you and feel completely alone because they don't love you. They love the performance. They love the version of you that never says no, never has needs, never creates inconvenience. They love the you that doesn't actually exist. And some part of you knows this, which is why the connection you've worked so hard to maintain feels hollow, empty, unsatisfying. You're connected to everyone and intimate with no one, including yourself. And right now, reading this, something in you is recognizing itself. You're feeling seen in a way that's both relieving and terrifying. Because if this is true, if this is really what's happening, then what? If you've built your entire life on a foundation of self-abandonment, if every relationship you have is based on a version of you that isn't real, if the love you've received has been conditional on your compliance, then what does it mean to stop? What happens when you start saying no? When you start asserting boundaries, when you start showing up as your actual self instead of the carefully curated version you've perfected. It means things will change. Relationships will shift. Some people will be confused. Others will be angry. A few will feel betrayed, like you've broken an unspoken contract, which you have. The contract was that you would remain small, available, flexible, easy, that you would prioritize their comfort over your authenticity, that you would be who they needed you to be. And when you stop honoring that contract, when you start choosing yourself, there will be consequences. But here's what else is true. What you're doing right now, this constant self-betrayal, this endless performance, this life without boundaries, it has consequences too. The consequence is that you're dying inside, slowly, quietly. The consequence is that you're living a life that looks successful from the outside while feeling hollow on the inside. The consequence is that you're surrounded by people and profoundly alone. The consequence is that you wake up one day and realize you've spent decades being who everyone else needed, and you have no idea who you actually are. There's a pull inside you, underneath all the fear and the conditioning and the learned patterns, a pull towards something more real, more whole, more true. You feel it in moments of quiet, in the middle of the night, in those rare instances when you're alone and the performance drops and you catch a glimpse of something underneath, something that wants to emerge, something that's been waiting, patient and persistent for you to notice it, for you to choose it, for you to come home to it. This pull isn't trying to make you better. It's not about self-improvement or becoming more than you are. It's about removing the layers of performance and conditioning and fear that have buried your actual self. It's about stopping the constant translation, the endless editing, the perpetual self-betrayal. It's about alignment. When who you are inside matches who you show on the outside. When your yes means yes, and your no means no. When your life is an expression of your truth rather than a performance designed to keep everyone else comfortable. Let me tell you about Sarah. She was 43 when she realized she'd been saying yes to things she didn't want to do for as long as she could remember. It started with a small thing. Her book club chose a novel she had no interest in reading. In the past, she would have read it anyway, shown up to the discussion, pretended to have opinions about it. This time, something in her just couldn't. She sent a text to the group saying she was skipping this month's book. Simple, direct, true. The response was immediate and uncomfortable. Questions about whether she was okay, concern that seemed tinged with judgment, a sense that she'd violated some unspoken rule. Sarah's stomach churned. Her hands shook. Every instinct screamed at her to take it back, to apologize, to explain, to make it okay. She sat with her phone in her hand, crafting and deleting responses, feeling the weight of everyone's confusion and disapproval pressing down on her. But she didn't take it back. She rode out the discomfort. She let people be confused. She allowed their disappointment without trying to fix it. And something shifted, not externally. The book club members were still slightly confused, still a little put out. But internally, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in years. Space, breathing room, the relief of having told the truth and survived it. That small moment became a doorway. Sarah started noticing all the other places she was saying yes when she meant no. The weekend plans she agreed to while dreading them. The work projects she took on while already drowning. The family obligations she fulfilled while resenting every minute. She started experimenting with no, small no's at first, declining invitations, leaving gatherings early, saying she wasn't available instead of rearranging her entire life to accommodate someone else's request. Each no felt like jumping off a cliff. Her body screamed danger. Her mind generated catastrophic scenarios. She would lose friends. Her family would reject her. Her co-workers would think she wasn't a team player. Her partner would leave. She would end up alone, unwanted, abandoned. But she kept jumping anyway. And each time she landed safely. Each time she discovered that the catastrophe her nervous system predicted didn't materialize. People adjusted. Relationships recalibrated. And the ones that couldn't handle her boundaries revealed themselves as connections that were never really about her anyway. Sarah lost some friends. The ones who only wanted her when she was endlessly available, perpetually accommodating, never needing anything in return. Those friendships faded, and she grieved them even while recognizing they were built on her self-abandonment. But other friendships deepened. The people who could handle her, who respected her boundaries, who wanted to know her actual preferences, became closer. Real intimacy became possible when she stopped performing. Her family struggled the most. They'd relied on her emotional labor, her constant availability, her role as the family glue. When she started saying no to hosting every holiday, to mediating every conflict, to being the dumping ground for everyone's problems, they didn't know what to do with her. There were hurt feelings, accusations of selfishness, attempts to guilt her back into her old role. Sarah felt all of it. The guilt was enormous, crushing, almost unbearable, but underneath the guilt was something else. Anger, righteous, clean anger at having been used for so long, at having been valued only for what she could provide, not for who she was. She started therapy, started learning to sit with the discomfort of other people's disappointment without trying to fix it. Started understanding that she wasn't responsible for everyone else's emotional experience. Started recognizing that boundaries weren't walls to keep people out, but structures that allowed real connection to happen. That saying no to what she didn't want created space to say yes to what she did. That protecting her energy wasn't selfish, but necessary. That she couldn't pour from an empty cup, and her cup had been empty for years. The transformation wasn't linear. Sarah had setbacks, days when the old patterns reasserted themselves and she found herself agreeing to things she didn't want to do, absorbing other people's emotions, performing the role she'd played for decades. But now she noticed. Now she could catch herself mid-performance and make a different choice. Now she had language for what was happening and tools to navigate it differently. And slowly, gradually, something remarkable happened. Sarah started to remember who she was. Preferences emerged. Desires surfaced. She discovered she actually liked spending time alone. That she had opinions that differed from the people around her. That she had needs and wants and boundaries that were valid simply because they were hers. She started making choices based on what she wanted rather than what would keep everyone else comfortable. She started building a life that felt like hers instead of one designed to accommodate everyone else. The cost was real. Some relationships ended, others changed significantly. Her family remained confused and occasionally hurt. But Sarah also experienced something she'd never felt before: peace. The deep, internal peace that comes from alignment, from congruence, from living in a way where her inside matched her outside, from no longer betraying herself in small moments and large ones, from finally, after 43 years, choosing herself. Now think about Marcus, 37, successful lawyer, married with 2 kids, respected in his community. From the outside, he had it all. From the inside, he was suffocating. Marcus's boundary issue looked different from Sarah's. He didn't struggle with saying no to specific requests. He struggled with the larger boundary of having any life separate from his work and family obligations. He was always on, always available, always performing the role of successful lawyer, devoted husband, involved father. Marcus couldn't remember the last time he'd done something just for himself, something that wasn't productive or responsible or in service of someone else. His mornings started with work emails. His days were back-to-back meetings and client calls. His evenings were family time, helping with homework, making dinner, being present. His weekends were kids' activities, household projects, extended family obligations. He fell into bed exhausted every night and woke up tired every morning, already behind on everything. He told himself this was just how life was. This was what responsibility looked like. This was being a good father, a good husband, a good provider. But his body was telling him something different. He had constant headaches. His blood pressure was climbing. He wasn't sleeping well. He'd started having panic attacks, sudden moments where he couldn't breathe, where his chest tightened and his vision narrowed and he felt like he was dying. The panic attack scared him enough to see a therapist. And in that office, for the first time in years, someone asked him what he wanted. Not what he should do, not what his responsibilities were, not what everyone else needed from him. What did he want? Marcus sat in silence for a long time. The question felt foreign, threatening. He genuinely didn't know how to answer it. Over weeks and months, Marcus started excavating his own desires from under the mountain of obligations and expectations and roles. He discovered he missed playing guitar, something he'd loved in college but abandoned when life got serious. He realized he craved solitude, actual time alone without the pressure to be productive or available. He noticed he resented his work, the constant demands, the way it consumed his life and left nothing for himself. But here's what Marcus also discovered. He was terrified of wanting things, because wanting things meant potentially not getting them, meant risking disappointment, meant being vulnerable, meant acknowledging that the life he'd built, successful as it looked, wasn't actually satisfying him. And if he admitted that, then what? He'd have to change things. He'd have to disappoint people. He'd have to choose himself sometimes. And he'd learned long ago that choosing yourself was selfish. Marcus's father had been absent, physically present but emotionally unavailable, always working, always stressed, never there. Marcus had promised himself he'd be different, he'd be present, he'd show up. He'd be the father his own father couldn't be, but in trying to be the opposite of his father, Marcus had abandoned himself just as thoroughly. Different method, same result. He was still unavailable, but now he was unavailable to himself instead of to his family. The work of setting boundaries for Marcus meant first acknowledging that he had an inside life that mattered, that his needs were real and valid, that taking care of himself wasn't selfish but necessary, that he couldn't be present for anyone else if he was perpetually absent from himself. This felt revolutionary and terrifying. It meant disappointing people. It meant his wife having to adjust her expectations. It meant his kids not having him available every moment. It meant his clients not getting instant responses. It meant being less perfect, less available, less accommodating. Marcus started small. He blocked off Sunday mornings for himself. 2 hours where he wasn't dad or husband or lawyer, just Marcus. His wife was confused at first, slightly resentful of this sudden shift. His kids protested, but Marcus held the boundary. He sat with the discomfort of their disappointment. He rode out the guilt. And in those Sunday mornings, he started playing guitar again. Started remembering what it felt like to do something just because he wanted to, not because it served anyone else. That small boundary opened others. Marcus started leaving work at a reasonable hour instead of staying until everything was done, which was never. He started saying no to new clients when his plate was full. He started taking actual lunch breaks instead of eating at his desk. He started asking his wife for what he needed instead of assuming his needs didn't matter. He started modeling for his kids that having boundaries was healthy, that taking care of yourself wasn't selfish, that you could love people and still need space from them. The transformation was uncomfortable for everyone. Marcus's wife had to pick up some slack she'd gotten used to him handling. His kids had to adjust to dad not being available every second. His colleagues had to respect his boundaries instead of assuming his infinite availability. But something else happened too. Marcus's marriage got better. When he stopped resenting his wife for needs he'd never expressed. When he started showing up as his full self instead of just the provider and caretaker, they could actually connect. His kids respected him more, not less. And his work improved because he was no longer running on empty. Marcus learned that boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping yourself in. They're about maintaining your own integrity, your own wholeness, your own center while still being in relationship. They're about the truth that you can't give what you don't have. And if you're constantly depleted, you have nothing genuine to offer anyone. The most generous thing he could do for his family was to stop abandoning himself, to show up full instead of empty, to be present from a place of choice rather than obligation. Both Sarah and Marcus discovered something crucial. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It means you start including yourself in the circle of people you care about. It means recognizing that your needs matter just as much as everyone else's. That your time, your energy, your life are valuable resources that deserve protection and respect. That saying yes to yourself doesn't have to mean saying no to everyone else, but it does mean you get to be part of the equation. Here's what happens in your body when you start setting boundaries. At first, there's panic. Your nervous system sounds every alarm, danger, threat, abandonment imminent. Your heart races, your stomach drops, your hands shake. This is the fear response, ancient and powerful, telling you that you're risking everything, and in a way, you are. You're risking the false safety of being who everyone else needs you to be. You're risking the conditional love you've been receiving. You're risking the approval that's come from your endless availability. But if you can stay with the discomfort, if you can ride out the panic without immediately returning to your old patterns, something shifts. Your nervous system starts to learn that boundaries don't actually lead to death. That saying no doesn't result in abandonment. That asserting yourself doesn't destroy relationships. It recalibrates. The fear response gets less intense. The panic subsides more quickly. You start to feel something you haven't felt in years. Grounded, centered, solid. This is what it feels like when you stop abandoning yourself, when your inside and your outside align. When your yes means yes and your no means no. When you're not constantly translating, editing, performing. There's a settledness that comes from this alignment, a sense of being home in yourself. Your body relaxes in a way it hasn't in years because it's no longer on constant alert, no longer managing the cognitive dissonance of saying one thing while feeling another, no longer carrying the exhaustion of perpetual performance. And here's the beautiful, terrifying truth. Some people won't like it. Some people will be uncomfortable with your boundaries. Some people will push back, test them, try to guilt you back into your old patterns. These responses tell you everything you need to know. The people who can't respect your boundaries are people who benefited from your lack of them. They're people who preferred you small, accommodating, available. They're people who related to the performance, not to you. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them be disappointed. Let them be confused. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Their disappointment is not yours to fix. Their confusion is not yours to resolve. You are not responsible for managing everyone else's emotional experience. You are not the emotional support animal for every person in your life. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you become cold or selfish or disconnected. It means you start including yourself in your circle of care. It means you recognize that you are also a person whose needs matter, whose time is valuable, whose energy is finite, whose life deserves to be lived according to your own values and desires, not just in service of everyone else's. The people who truly care about you, who want relationship with your actual self and not just the performance, will adjust. They might be confused at first. They might need time to recalibrate, but they'll respect your boundaries because they respect you. They'll appreciate your honesty because it creates space for real intimacy. They'll value your no because it makes your yes meaningful. These are the relationships worth keeping. These are the connections that can deepen when you stop performing and start being real. And you'll discover something remarkable. When you start setting boundaries, when you start saying no to what doesn't serve you, you create space for what does. You have energy for the things and people and activities that actually matter to you. You can say yes from a place of genuine desire rather than obligation. You can show up fully because you're not depleted from overextending yourself everywhere else. You can be present because you're not constantly managing everyone else's needs while ignoring your own. Your life starts to feel like yours, not a life designed to accommodate everyone else. Not a life built on what you should do or what people expect or what keeps everyone comfortable. A life that reflects your actual values, your genuine preferences, your real desires. A life where you get to take up space, where your needs matter, where you're not constantly apologizing for existing, for having wants, for requiring things. This is what's available to you, not perfection. Not a life without conflict or discomfort or difficult conversations, but a life where you're present in your own experience, where you're not a stranger to yourself, where the person you are in private matches the person you show the world, where your relationships are based on truth rather than performance, where you can breathe fully because you're not constantly holding yourself in, making yourself smaller, editing your reality to make it more palatable for everyone else. The choice is yours right now, in this moment. You can keep doing what you've always done. Keep saying yes when you mean no. Keep performing. Keep abandoning yourself in small moments and large ones. Keep building a life that looks good from the outside while feeling hollow on the inside. Keep waiting for permission to matter, to have needs, to take up space. That permission will never come from outside you. The world will take everything you're willing to give and ask for more. Your family will rely on your endless availability. Your friends will expect your constant support. Your work will demand your infinite flexibility. They will take and take and take until you have nothing left, and then they will be confused about why you're depleted. Or you can start now. You can start with one small boundary, one no, where you would usually say yes, one assertion of what you need, one moment of choosing yourself. It will feel terrifying. Your nervous system will panic. The people around you will be confused. You will feel guilty, selfish, wrong. Do it anyway. Ride out the discomfort, survive the fear, discover that you don't die when you set a boundary, discover that relationships don't end when you tell the truth, discover that the people who matter can handle your full humanity, and the people who can't weren't really seeing you anyway. Start noticing where you're performing, where you're translating your truth into something more acceptable, where you're saying yes while everything inside you screams no, where you're abandoning yourself to keep someone else comfortable. Just notice. Don't judge it. Don't try to change it immediately. Just see it. Bring awareness to the pattern. Watch yourself doing it. Feel what it costs you every time you betray yourself in service of someone else's comfort. Then start experimenting. What happens if you tell the truth? What happens if you say no? What happens if you assert what you need? What happens if you stop performing for just a moment and let people see your actual experience? Test it. In small ways at first, with people who feel safer. In situations where the stakes are lower. Build your capacity to tolerate the discomfort of other people's disappointment. Strengthen your ability to hold your boundaries even when people push back. And as you do this, as you start choosing yourself, pay attention to what emerges. Your own preferences, your own desires, your own sense of what matters to you. The parts of yourself you've buried under years of accommodation and performance will start to surface. You'll remember what you actually like, what you actually want, who you actually are underneath all the roles and expectations and conditioning. This is the journey. Not to become something new, but to uncover what's always been there. Not to add more to yourself, but to remove the layers of performance that have hidden your true self. Not to improve or fix or transform into some idealized version, but simply to come home to who you actually are and have always been underneath the fear and the conditioning and the learned patterns of self-abandonment. You are not too much. Your needs are not too demanding. Your boundaries are not too rigid. Your authentic self is not too difficult. You have spent your life making yourself smaller, easier, more convenient for everyone else. You have translated your truth into something more palatable. You have performed endless variations of who you thought you needed to be loved, to be accepted, to belong. And it has cost you everything. Your energy, your peace, your sense of self, your life. What if you stopped? What if you let yourself be difficult? What if you took up space? What if you asserted your needs without apologizing? What if you said no without explanation? What if you chose yourself as readily as you choose everyone else? What if you treated your own time, energy, and life with the same respect you give to others? What if you mattered as much as everyone else matters? You do matter. Your life is not a resource to be consumed by everyone else's needs. Your time is not infinitely flexible. Your energy is not endlessly renewable. You are a human being with limits, with needs, with desires, with a right to a life that feels like yours. You are allowed to have boundaries. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to disappoint people. You are allowed to be inconvenient. You are allowed to exist in your full humanity without constantly editing yourself into something more acceptable. The life you've been seeking, the one where you feel at home in yourself, where you're not exhausted all the time, where your relationships feel real instead of performative, where you have energy for what matters to you, where you're not constantly resentful and depleted, that life is on the other side of boundaries. It's on the other side of choosing yourself. It's on the other side of the fear of other people's disappointment. It's on the other side of the guilt that comes from prioritizing your own needs. It's waiting for you. It's always been waiting for you. You just have to be brave enough to claim it.